On Halloween night, Talia hosted a costume party for family and friends. Every guest who arrived in costume received a festive gift basket as a thank you for joining in the fun. To make the evening even more exciting, Talia announced a costume contest. The guest who not only wore the best costume but also stayed in character and delivered the most entertaining performance throughout the night will win a $50 gift card to the restaurant or business of their choice. Everyone was waiting for Tate and Noah to arrive. The doorbell rang and Talia hurried to answer it. She opened the door to find Tate standing on the porch. "Where's Chloe?" Talia asked. Tate only shrugged before stepping inside and taking a seat as though nothing was unusual. A moment later, the doorbell rang again. Puzzled, Talia walked back to the front door and opened it. Her eyes widened. Standing on the porch was Tate. She blinked and looked over her shoulder at the Tate already sitting in the living room. There were two of them. "What's?" Talia muttered before laughing. "Come in, Tate." The second Tate grinned. "Chloe's behind me," he said. Only then did Talia realize what was happening. The first Tate wasn't Tate at all, it was Noah, dressed exactly like him. Chloe stepped in behind the real Tate, dressed as a brightly colored parrot, while Tate wore a pirate costume, the perfect matching pair. Tate walked over and sat down beside Anna and Bree. The two women stared past him at the second Tate in disbelief. "Are you David Copperfield?" Anna asked. "Because you've managed to arrive twice in the last 5 minutes." Tate frowned and gave her a puzzled look before turning his head. The moment he spotted another version of himself sitting across the room, his face twisted into utter confusion. The other Tate had the same black hair, the same designer Gucci clothes, and the same permanent scowl. For a split second, even Tate wasn't sure what he was looking at. Tate felt like he'd wandered into the Twilight Zone. The second Chloe caught sight of the other Tate on the couch and let out a startled scream. "You have a twin," she cried. "You never told me." Completely bewildered, Tate walked over and stared at the man lounging on the couch. The fake Tate was an exact copy, same black hair, same Gucci clothes, same permanent scowl, even the same way he slouched. Without breaking character, the fake Tate spoke. "I want a drink," Noah said in a flawless imitation of Tate's voice. "I need fortification so I can talk in another voice and pass out on the living room floor later this evening when I decide I'm no longer going to feel anything." The room burst into laughter. Susie didn't hesitate. Still playing along with the joke, she stood, headed for the kitchen, and started making Tate a drink. The fake Tate casually unbuttoned the top of his shirt and placed a hand dramatically against his chest. "I have this overwhelming desire to go upstairs and spend an hour alone with myself," he declared in Tate's voice. "I take forever in the bathroom touching myself, but if my buddy disappears upstairs for 5 minutes, suddenly I need to know exactly what he's doing. I firmly believe in double standards." The room erupted in laughter. Without missing a beat, Noah continued the performance. "And if I accidentally do something wrong," the fake Tate said, "I fully expect everyone to forgive me and overlook it immediately, even though none of my other friends would ever get away with the things I get away with." Susie nearly spilled the drink she was making as everyone laughed harder while the real Tate stood frozen, watching Noah dismantle his personality with unnerving accuracy. "When I go to a party," the fake Tate announced, "I'm very limited in who I can talk to because I've slept with practically everybody, and most of the women are still annoyed that I never called them back." He sighed dramatically and held out his empty glass. "Could somebody get me another drink? Actually, Noah, could someone just line up 15 glasses so I can get started?" Talia doubled over laughing. "That's my son to a T," she said between fits of laughter. The fake Tate suddenly sprang to his feet and stomped his right foot like a spoiled toddler. "Where is my drink?" he demanded. "Why wasn't my drink here 5 seconds ago? Where is it?" Susie walked over and handed him the glass. The fake Tate took it with exaggerated indignation, muttering, "It's about time," before taking a long sip, sending the room into another round of laughter. The fake Tate took a long swig of his drink, then held the glass out in front of him and frowned at it. "Get in my mouth," he scolded the drink. "You took too long, bad drink." He gave the cup a light smack with the back of his hand before narrowing his eyes suspiciously at his drink. "Have you been with my uncle?" For a heartbeat the room was silent. Then the entire house exploded with laughter. Anna bent over, clutching her stomach. Bree wiped tears from her eyes as she laughed so hard she could barely breathe. Chloe covered her mouth, shaking her head in disbelief. "Oh my God," she gasped, "he really does sound exactly like him." Talia was laughing the hardest of anyone. She leaned against the wall to keep herself upright, tears streaming down her cheeks. "That's my son," she managed between laughs. "Every expression, every complaint, that's Tate." Susie walked back into the living room, carrying the bottle, and set it on the coffee table. "I think I'm just going to leave the whole bottle here," she said with a grin. "It's clearly not going to last." Even Terrence couldn't hide a smirk as he watched Noah commit completely to the role. The real Tate stood in the middle of the room with his arms folded, staring at Noah in utter disbelief. "I don't know whether to be impressed or offended," Tate muttered. Without missing a beat, the fake Tate looked at him, rolled his eyes in perfect imitation, and replied in Tate's voice, "Both." The room erupted into another wave of uncontrollable laughter. What made the performance even more unsettling was that Noah had gone all out. He even had bought hazel contact lenses, giving him the same eye color as Tate. From a distance, the resemblance was almost perfect. The fake Tate glanced down at his empty glass, frowned dramatically, and stomped his foot like an impatient toddler. "I need to be serviced," he declared. "Can a woman service me? Anybody willing to service my privates? I'm not picky. Keep my drink full, will you?" The room dissolved into laughter. The real Tate, however, wasn't amused. He folded his arms and fixed Noah with a hard glare. Noah ignored him completely. Still in character, he marched straight over to Terrence, pointed a finger at him, and barked in Tate's voice, "Shut the fuck up, father." Terrence burst out laughing so hard he had to grab the back of a chair to steady himself. Without missing a beat, Noah turned and walked directly up to the real Tate. He wrapped both arms around him in an exaggerated hug, grinning from ear to ear. "I found Penelope Pussycat," the fake Pepe Tate announced. "If I could, I'd get even closer than this." The room erupted. Talia was laughing so hard that tears streamed down her cheeks. Anna doubled over, gasping for air. Bree had to sit down before she fell over, and Chloe covered her face, shaking her head in complete disbelief. "Oh, this is terrifying," Chloe laughed. "He isn't just dressed like Tate, he is Tate." Even Terrence couldn't suppress a grin. Tate, meanwhile, stood perfectly still inside Noah's embrace. His glare never wavered, though the corners of his mouth twitched despite his best efforts. "You've been studying me way too much," Tate muttered. Noah, still refusing to break character, looked up at him with Tate's trademark scowl. "I prefer to call it research." Another roar of laughter swept through the room as the real Tate sighed, realizing everyone was enjoying the impersonation far more than he was. The fake Tate casually draped an arm around Anna's shoulders and flashed an exaggerated smirk. "Have I told you how much I love myself?" he asked in Tate's voice. "Every time I look in the mirror, I realize I'm full of myself." The room burst into another round of laughter. Susie wandered a little closer, curious to see what Noah would do next. Without even looking at him, the fake Tate waved a dismissive hand. "Go away, Joey." Noah folded his arms like Tate and then grinned. "Quiet, old man, you can't make me Joey." That single line made the real Tate flinch. Everyone noticed. Anna laughed so hard she had tears in her eyes. Bree buried her face in a cushion to muffle her laughter while Talia pointed at Tate, unable to stop giggling. "There it is," Talia exclaimed. "That's the exact look he gets." Terrence chuckled and shook his head. Noah has every little mannerism memorized. Tate stared at Noah in complete disbelief. Every gesture, every expression, every sarcastic remark was unnervingly accurate. "You've been paying far too much attention to me," Tate muttered. Still refusing to break character, Noah shrugged with Tate's trademark expression. "I've had years of practice." The room erupted once again while Tate simply rubbed a hand over his face, wondering how his ex-buddy had managed to become such a perfect and embarrassing copy of him. The fake Tate wandered over to the refreshment table and over the next several minutes managed to put away 10 martinis, sloppily spilling as much as he drank. He smacked his lips dramatically. "They almost taste as good as a beautiful woman," Noah declared in Tate's voice. He blinked several times and swayed unsteadily. "Oh no," the fake Tate groaned, "I'm starting to feel faint." He placed the back of his hand against his forehead like a silent film actor. "I have to win that Academy Award, I perform every day." With an exaggerated melodramatic wobble worthy of an Oscar acceptance speech, the fake Tate staggered 3 steps across the living room before collapsing face first onto the carpet with a loud thud. The room went silent for a split second. Then everyone burst into uncontrollable laughter. Without lifting his face from the floor, the fake Tate raised one finger. "Can someone fix my shirt?" he mumbled. "I need to look fabulous and sexually desirable while I'm unconscious." Anna was laughing so hard she had to lean against Bree for support. Bree was wiping tears from her eyes, barely able to breathe. Talia doubled over, clutching her stomach. "I can't," Talia gasped between laughs. "He's got every single one of Tate's dramatic moments memorized." Even Terrence laughed openly, shaking his head in disbelief. The real Tate stood with his arms crossed, staring down at Noah's motionless body on the carpet. "You've embarrassed me in ways I didn't know were possible," Tate said dryly. Without moving an inch, the fake Tate replied from the floor in Tate's unmistakable voice. "Then my work here is done." The living room erupted into another deafening round of laughter. 10 minutes later, the fake Noah suddenly sat upright on the floor. "Bedtime," Noah announced in a perfect imitation of Tate's own voice. Everyone looked at him, confused. Without hesitation, he slipped off his jacket and shoes until he was standing there in nothing but his shorts. He spread a blanket across the living room floor, laid another one over the top, and crawled underneath like he was tucking himself into bed. He peeked out from beneath the blanket. "Why am I alone in bed?" the fake Tate mumbled. "It's 9 o'clock, where's my bed warmer?" Susie laughed. He patted the space beside him. Bed warmer, I can't regulate my own body temperature. Come to bed so I can curl around you." Tate growled. The room chuckled as Noah continued the performance with complete sincerity. "Oh no," he whispered dramatically, "I've hurt its feelings." He slowly pushed the blanket aside and climbed to his feet. "I have to go find it so it'll come back, we belong together." Still half wrapped in the blanket like a cape, the fake Tate wandered around the living room, peering behind chairs and looking under tables. "Where are you?" he called. "What did I do this time?" He sighed theatrically. "I don't care what it was that hurt your feelings. I have to get some sleep, so I have to find the actor within myself to admit my mistakes in style without changing my behavior." The room erupted with laughter. Anna covered her face, laughing so hard she couldn't breathe. Bree had tears streaming down her cheeks. Talia leaned against Terrence, wiping her eyes. "Oh, this is priceless," Talia managed. Even Terrence couldn't stop laughing. The real Tate watched the performance with his arms folded, shaking his head. "I don't sound like that." The fake Tate looked up with complete innocence. "That's exactly what you'd say." The room exploded once again. The real Tate was scowling now too, despite everyone laughing. "I don't know who's more terrifying tonight," Talia said between laughs, "fake Tate or the real Tate." The fake Tate shot up from the couch and looked around the room in exaggerated distress. "I can't find my bed warmer," he wailed. "I'm going to freeze and turn into Jack Frost." He stomped his foot repeatedly like an impatient toddler. "I'm thirsty, I want my bed, I want my binky, I want my Noe, I want my blanket." The room was already roaring with laughter. Noah, still perfectly committed to the role, folded his arms and pouted. "No matter how immature I act, everybody just writes it off as it's just Tate." He threw his hands into the air. "I don't care about anyone else's feelings right now. Mine are obviously the only ones that matter." He spun dramatically toward the snack table. "Fine, I'm going to get some bland chips so at least I can get fat while I hide my feelings." He marched across the room with exaggerated determination, grabbed a bag of bland chips, hugged it possessively to his chest, and glared suspiciously at everyone. "They're mine," the fake Tate warned. "Don't even think about asking for one." Talia was laughing so hard she had tears streaming down her cheeks. "Oh Noah," she gasped, "you've completely lost your mind." Anna leaned against Bree, unable to stop laughing. "He even got the foot stomping right." Terrence shook his head, grinning from ear to ear. I've never seen anyone study another human being this closely. The real Tate stood with his arms folded, staring at Noah in complete disbelief. Every exaggerated mannerism was unmistakably his. Finally, Tate let out a long sigh. You know, I hate that parts of this are actually accurate. Noah flashed the same smug grin Tate was famous for. I know. That single word sent the room into yet another explosion of laughter. The fake Tate spotted a throw pillow on the couch and immediately scooped it into his arms. I found Noe, he exclaimed, hugging the pillow tightly against his chest. I found my bed warmer. He rocked it dramatically before narrowing his eyes at it. You naughty, naughty little bed warmer. He gave the pillow a few playful swats. You lie where I tell you to lie, you roll over when I tell you to, and you're grateful that you have my attention. The room dissolved into laughter. And don't even think about going to dinner with Mark, the fake Tate warned the pillow. That's completely unacceptable. At that exact moment the telephone rang. The timing was so perfect that the room fell silent. Still clutching the pillow under one arm, the fake Tate marched over, snatched up the receiver and answered with Tate's trademark scowl. Hello. He listened for a moment before his expression darkened. No, Noah isn't available. Another pause. He's moved to Antarctica. He listened again, then cut the caller off. No, you may not call back. The room was already trying not to laugh. He's my property, I tell him what he can do and he does it. If I say you're not allowed to call back, then you're not allowed to call back. He paused dramatically. And Mark. The fake Tate pointed at the phone as if the caller could see him. If you come anywhere near Noah, I'll bury you in the garden. With that, Noah slammed the receiver onto its cradle. For a heartbeat, the room was completely silent. Then everyone exploded. Anna doubled over laughing. Bree buried her face in the couch cushions. Talia had tears streaming down her face as she clutched Terrence's arm for support. Even Susie had to lean against the kitchen counter because she was laughing so hard. Terrence shook his head in amazement. I don't know whether that's the funniest thing I've ever seen, or the most frightening. The real Tate stood frozen, staring at Noah with a mixture of disbelief and reluctant admiration. You've been taking notes on me for years, haven't you? Tate said. Still holding the pillow protectively, Noah looked at him with Tate's familiar scowl. I have no idea what you're talking about. The room erupted into another thunderous round of laughter. Instead of returning to the couch, the fake Tate remained planted beside the telephone, glaring at the imaginary caller. He began stomping his foot with theatrical impatience. Hang up the phone, he demanded. Hang up, I need attention as a 4-year-old because I can't handle 2 grown men having a conversation without me. The room was already laughing before he continued. I require an unreasonable amount of attention. The second someone looks away, I immediately assume Noe's abandoning me. Stomp, stomp. He folded his arms and nodded dramatically. So I've installed security cameras all over the property. I've bolted every window and every door. You're not escaping. He pointed an accusing finger toward the hallway. And if you somehow make it outside, I'll drag you right back in. Another exaggerated stomp. If you lock the bedroom door, I'll just find another way in by removing the hinges. He let out an exasperated sigh. So what if you wanted one night to yourself? That's obviously not part of my plan. He stomped even harder. Hang up the phones. He threw both hands into the air. I want to be adored. The living room erupted. Talia was bent over laughing, tears running down her face. Anna was clutching Bree's shoulder to keep from falling over while Terrence shook his head, trying and failing to hide a grin. The real Tate stood perfectly still, staring at Noah with complete disbelief. You are never ever living this performance down, Tate muttered. Without breaking character, the fake Tate glanced sideways at him. I know. That single reply sent everyone into another round of uncontrollable laughter. For the grand finale, the fake Tate suddenly threw himself onto the living room floor. He rolled from side to side, kicking his feet against the carpet in the most dramatic tantrum anyone had ever seen. I want Noe, he wailed, I want Noe. He pounded a fist against the floor. Somebody go get him, I don't care what it takes, I want Noe. He rolled onto his back and flailed his arms dramatically. I want Noe, I want Noe. He pointed accusingly around the room. If you don't bring Noe back, I'm going to complain until everybody's as miserable as I am. Another theatrical kick. I want Noe. He buried his face in the carpet for a moment before lifting his head just enough to let out one final, pitiful cry. I want Noe. The room fell completely silent. Then every single person burst into uncontrollable laughter. Talia laughed so hard she had to sit down, tears streaming down her cheeks. Anna was doubled over, gasping for air while Bree could barely remain standing. Susie wiped tears from her eyes, and even Terrence was laughing hard enough that he had to steady himself against the wall. The real Tate simply stared at Noah lying sprawled across the carpet. Finally he sighed and shook his head. You've officially committed to the bet. Noah remained perfectly still for another few seconds before opening one eye. In my defense, he said in Tate's voice, I thought I deserved best performance. The room erupted once more. Talia pointed toward Noah and declared, well, I think we have our costume contest winner. The applause and laughter filled the house as Noah finally climbed to his feet and gave an exaggerated bow, still wearing Tate's trademark scowl. The fake Tate climbed to his feet, brushed imaginary dust from his clothes, and took several deep, theatrical bows as if he had just finished performing on a Broadway stage. Thank you, he called, waving to his imaginary audience. You've been wonderful. He paused at the bottom of the staircase and glanced back with a mischievous grin. I'm going upstairs to put on some makeup. You haven't seen round 2 yet. With that, Noah disappeared upstairs. The room slowly quieted. Tate's confidence vanished. He rubbed his forehead and let out a long sigh. Please tell me he's finished, he muttered. Nobody answered. Talia was still giggling. You know Noah better than we do. I do, Tate replied grimly. That's exactly why I'm worried. 10 agonizing minutes passed. The staircase creaked. Every head in the room turned. Slowly Noah descended the stairs. The room went completely silent. He no longer looked anything like Tate. Instead, with expertly applied makeup, subtle wrinkles around his eyes and forehead, and carefully styled hair, he looked almost exactly like Joey, only about 10 years older. The resemblance was uncanny. Tate took one look at him. His eyes widened. Oh, absolutely not. He spun on his heel and bolted for the kitchen as the rest of the family erupted into laughter, already realizing Noah's performance wasn't over yet. Noah looked so much like Uncle Joey that the room fell silent for a moment. The wrinkles, the hairstyle, the posture, even the expression were uncannily accurate. Then Noah spoke in a flawless imitation of Joey's voice. Nephew, he called calmly, come out of the kitchen. I must chastise you for behaving like a baby at the party. Come here, and don't bite me. The living room exploded with laughter. Anna was bent over, Bree had tears running down her cheeks, and Talia was laughing so hard she could barely remain standing. Tate is going to lose his mind, Terrence chuckled. Still in character, the fake Joey marched into the kitchen. Tate, he called, where are you, nephew? A split second later, a horrified scream echoed through the house. No! Tate burst out of the kitchen at full speed, darting past everyone in the living room. The fake Joey pointed dramatically. There he is. Noah took off after him, perfectly maintaining Joey's measured stride despite the absurdity of the chase. Come back here, nephew, the fake Joey called. I'm going to discipline you since no one else seems willing to. Tate didn't even look back. He bounded up the stairs 2 at a time while the fake Joey continued after him, never once breaking character. The family was laughing so hard they could barely breathe. Talia had to sit down on the couch, wiping tears from her eyes. I have never, she gasped between laughs, seen Tate run that fast in his life. Tate's family couldn't stop laughing at seeing Joey so perfectly impersonated, while Noah's friends watched Tate disappear upstairs, wondering what Noah could possibly have planned next. The fake Joey quietly unlocked the door to Tate's childhood bedroom and stepped inside. There you are, nephew, Noah said in Joey's perfect voice. Before Tate could react, Noah climbed into bed beside him, completely committed to the performance. "You're toasty," the fake Joey said with a crooked smile as he wrapped an arm around Tate beneath the blankets. "Would you like me to tell you a story, the one about the dragon?" Tate's whole body flinched. The word dragon struck him like a physical blow. His muscles locked and the warmth of the bed disappeared beneath a wave of cold dread. His breathing turned shallow as memories he had spent years trying to bury clawed their way back to the surface. "No," Tate whispered, his voice barely audible, "please, not that story." The fake Joey tilted his head, studying him with an expression that wasn't quite human. His smile never reached his eyes. "But it was always your favorite," he said softly. "It wasn't." Silence settled over the room. Tate squeezed his eyes shut, willing himself to wake up. He could hear his own heartbeat pounding in his ears. Every instinct screamed that the person beside him wasn't Joey, not really. Whatever sat next to him had borrowed Joey's face, his voice, even the familiar cadence of his words, but there was something hollow underneath it all. When Tate opened his eyes again, the figure was still there, smiling patiently. "The dragon," the fake Joey repeated, "always finds the frightened boy." Tate's breath caught in his throat. "No." The room seemed to darken around the edges. The air grew impossibly still, as though the house itself were listening. Tate pulled the blanket tighter around himself, trembling despite the warmth. He knew this wasn't about a bedtime story. It had never been. The dragon had always been something else, something that followed him through nightmares, wearing different faces until he no longer knew who he could trust. The fake Joey leaned closer. "And this time," he whispered, "the dragon remembers your name." "I'm hungry," the ghost wearing Joey's face said with a wide, unsettling grin. "I think it's time I eat my little nephew, or," he chuckled, "would you rather go for ice cream? We could take my old pickup truck." Tate's eyes widened in terror. "No," he screamed, scrambling backward until his shoulders slammed into the wall. "I don't want ice cream. Leave me alone, old man. Please just leave me alone." His voice cracked as panic consumed him. The ghost only laughed. Then another laugh echoed through the room. And another. Soon it seemed as though invisible voices surrounded Tate, their laughter bouncing off the walls until he couldn't tell where it was coming from. Some sounded close enough to whisper in his ear, while others drifted from the darkness beyond the doorway. Tate clamped his hands over his ears. "Stop," he cried, "please stop laughing." The laughter only grew louder. His heart pounded violently against his ribs as tears blurred his vision. Every shadow seemed to move, every corner of the room felt alive, and the figure wearing Joey's familiar face simply stood there smiling. As though Tate's terror were the funniest thing in the world. "I said leave me alone," Tate shouted through sobs. For a brief moment the room fell silent. Then, from somewhere deep in the darkness, the ghost whispered his name. "Tate." Tate stumbled down the staircase, nearly missing the last few steps as panic propelled him toward the living room. His breath came in ragged gasps and his teeth chattered uncontrollably. He had always been terrified of ghosts, and tonight every shadow seemed alive. His eyes darted frantically around the room, searching for somewhere, anywhere to hide. The couch. He dropped to his knees and crawled behind it, curling into the smallest ball he could manage. He wrapped his arms around himself, trying to steady his trembling, but his heartbeat thundered so loudly he was sure anything haunting the house could hear it. "It's not real," he whispered, "it's not real." For one brief moment there was only silence. Tate slowly turned his head. Towering over him, just on the other side of the couch, stood Joey. Or something wearing Joey's face. The enormous figure stared down at him without blinking. His hazel eyes reflected almost no light, making them seem unnaturally empty. A slow, unnatural smile spread across his face. Tate's blood ran cold. His mouth fell open, but no sound came out at first. Then the scream burst from deep inside him. "Ugh!" He scrambled backward across the floor, his hands slipping against the hardwood as he desperately tried to get away. Every instinct screamed at him to run, but terror rooted him in place as the towering figure continued to stare down at him, smiling without saying a single word. Tate's eyes widened in horror. "Ghost, ghost," he screamed, get away from me." He scrambled backward, staring at Noah as if he had just seen something impossible. "Oh, come here, nephew," the fake Joey said in a calm, familiar tone. Uncle Joey just wants you to forgive him. Tate whimpered. Tate ducked behind Andrew, shivering so violently that his knees threatened to give out. Make him go away, Tate pleaded, clutching the back of Andrew's shirt. Before Andrew could answer, someone leaned in close behind Tate. The word was whispered directly into his ear. Boo! Tate let out a piercing shriek and spun around. Standing inches from him was Uncle Joey, or what Tate believed was Uncle Joey. The older man wore a mischievous grin as he spread his arms. Time for ice cream, he teased. Before Tate could react, the fake Uncle Joey caught him gently by the wrists and began steering him toward the front door. Come on, he said with a chuckle, you know what happens to naughty little boys. I don't want ice cream, Tate cried, digging his heels into the floor. Leave me alone. They don't get ice cream, the fake Joey finished dramatically, still trying to usher him outside, giggling in an evil tone. With a desperate twist, Tate broke free. He stumbled across the room, nearly losing his balance before diving behind Chloe and grabbing onto her like a lifeline. His heart hammered against his ribs as he buried his face against Chloe's shoulder. I'm not going, Tate gasped. For a moment the room fell silent. Then Noah couldn't keep the act going any longer. He stepped away from the Uncle Joey character, his playful expression fading into concern as he raised both hands. Okay, Noah said softly, it's over, I'm done pretending. The joking stopped immediately. Seeing how shaken Tate was, Noah's smile disappeared completely. He took a careful step closer, speaking in a calm, reassuring voice. Tate, it's just Noah, you're safe. Ghosts go away, Tate whimpered. For a moment, Tate froze, caught between disbelief and the absurdity of the situation. Then, overwhelmed by the combination of surprise and Noah's relentless impersonation, Tate reacted instinctively and slapped Noah across the cheek. The room went silent. Noah immediately dropped the Joey act and stared at him. The performance was over. Tate looked at him, realizing what he had just done, while Noah slowly shook his head. I think that's the first time anyone has ever been so committed to escaping a costume performance, Noah said. From the hallway, the family burst into laughter, unable to believe the final act of the night had somehow become even more dramatic. The last thing Noah said in the fake Tate voice was delivered with perfect dramatic timing. I'm tired of playing an asshole, he announced, so I'm going to become someone else. With that, Noah headed back downstairs. When he reappeared, he still looked exactly like Tate, but something had changed. He began switching between different voices and personalities, casually imitating people around the room. The effect was both impressive and unsettling. Everyone stared. Okay, Anna said slowly, this has officially crossed from funny into creepy. The fake Tate wandered over and sat beside Chloe. He casually draped an arm around her shoulder, wearing Tate's familiar expression. Hello, wife, he said in another perfectly matched voice. How are you? Chloe froze. Then he leaned closer with exaggerated confidence. Give me a kiss. Chloe immediately screamed and shoved him away. Nope, absolutely not. The entire room erupted in laughter. Talia was nearly crying from laughing so hard. Bree covered her face, shaking her head, while even the real Tate couldn't decide whether to be offended or impressed. Noah, Tate said, staring at him, I don't know if I should congratulate you or be concerned. Noah simply smiled, still completely committed to the performance. Both are acceptable. Then Noah delivered the one line nobody in the room expected to hear. He was still wearing the Uncle Joey makeup, still looking like an older version of the man he was impersonating, when he slowly turned toward the stairs. I'm going upstairs, the fake Joey announced. I'm going to see if Noah is in his bedroom thinking about me. He paused and gave Tate a mischievous wink. The reaction was immediate. Tate's expression changed from amusement to suspicion. Absolutely not, he muttered. The fake Joey ignored him and started walking toward the stairs. I'll be down in a few minutes, nephew, he called out. Where are you, Noah? Where's my favorite nephew? The room went quiet for a second. Everyone looked at each other. The joke had officially crossed from funny into slightly unsettling. Talia covered her mouth, trying not to laugh. Okay, she said, shaking her head. The makeup might have made this one a little too convincing. Tate watched Noah disappear upstairs and sighed. That is the creepiest version of Uncle Joey I've ever seen. Everyone burst into laughter again as they waited to see what Noah's next move would be. Upstairs in the hallway, everyone downstairs could hear the fake Joey continuing the performance. "There you are, Noah," he called in Joey's voice. "Were you thinking about me, thinking about us?" The ridiculousness of the situation had everyone downstairs laughing, but Tate's reaction was completely different. The moment he heard the words, his expression changed. The amusement vanished. A flash of pure, irrational jealousy crossed his face. "Excuse me," Tate said under his breath. He stood so quickly that everyone looked over at him. "Tate?" Talia asked, already recognizing that familiar look. But Tate was no longer laughing. His eyes were fixed on the staircase, as if Noah had committed some unforgivable offense. "You've got to be kidding me," he muttered. The fake Joey continued upstairs. "You're already in bed, well then let me join you." That was enough. Tate's jealousy completely took over. He marched toward the stairs, his jaw clenched, his frustration obvious. "Oh, absolutely not." The room fell silent as Tate stormed upstairs. Anna looked at Bree, both of them trying not to laugh. "Did Noah seriously make Tate jealous while dressed as Uncle Joey?" Anna whispered. Talia covered her mouth, shaking her head. "I think Noah may have accidentally found Tate's one weakness." Everyone watched as Tate disappeared up the stairs, knowing Noah's joke had gone from hilarious to dangerously personal. Jealous Tate stormed up the stairs, his jealousy getting the better of him with every step. From behind the door, he could hear the fake Uncle Joey continuing the performance. "Wow, you look great without clothes," Noah said in Joey's voice. "I have to admit this is quite a treat to see jailbait." Tate stopped in the hallway, his expression darkening as he heard the exaggerated intimacy sounds coming from inside the room. Then he heard the mattress squeak. Noah started making sex noises that were fake. It enraged Tate even more if that was possible. That was it. Tate pushed the door open. Inside, Noah was wearing Tate's signature black hairstyle again, fully committed to the ridiculous act. He was deliberately making the bed move just to sell the dramatic sex performance. Noah turned and looked completely offended. "How dare you walk in on two people having a private moment with each other's bodies?" Noah said in the fake Joey voice. "Do you have no boundaries?" Tate stared at him in disbelief. For a moment he looked like he couldn't decide whether he was furious, embarrassed, or completely exhausted. "You have got to be kidding me," Tate said. He stomped his foot, the same way Noah had been mocking him all night. "Enough." Noah broke character for half a second, but Tate wasn't laughing. "The real Tate is asking you to come downstairs, stop giving an Emmy-worthy performance and take off the makeup," Tate said. "This has gone from funny to creepy." From downstairs, everyone heard Tate's voice echo through the house. A moment later, the entire family burst into laughter. Talia shook her head. "I think we finally found the limit." Anna grinned. "Not Noah's limit, Tate's." And for the first time all night, even Tate had to admit Noah had somehow created the most unforgettable Halloween party anyone had ever attended. Noah gave Tate a scowl that was almost an exact copy of Tate's own expression. "But I wanted to spend the night with your uncle," Noah said in the exaggerated voice. "My lover came all the way from Phoenix to share my bed." Tate stared at him, completely unimpressed. The look on his face made it clear that Noah had officially pushed the joke too far. "Noah," Tate said slowly. But Noah was already walking away, still committed to the ridiculous performance. Tate shook his head and immediately followed him down the hallway. "No, absolutely not. You are not ending this Halloween party with that line." Behind them, everyone in the room burst into laughter as they watched Tate chase after Noah, who was still refusing to break character. Noah finally accepted that the performance was over. He started toward the door, still wearing the last traces of the costume, when Tate grabbed him by the collar and pulled him back, slamming Noah's body onto the bed while straddling the blonde's hips. "Why are you dressed like me?" Tate demanded. Noah burst out laughing. "Because I won," he said proudly. "There is no way anyone is going to give a better performance than me tonight." Tate stared at him, completely frustrated. Noah tilted his head and grinned. "Is this the part where you stomp your foot or act like a toddler?" Tate's eyes narrowed. The teasing only made Noah laugh harder. "You are unbelievable," Tate said. Noah smiled up at him, clearly enjoying how much the performance had gotten under his skin. "You're jealous, aren't you?" Tate immediately looked away. "Did you and my uncle actually?" Noah raised an eyebrow, refusing to answer. "That's my business, Tate." Tate stared at him in disbelief. "Noah." "Now let me up," Noah said, laughing. "I have to go downstairs and collect my prize for my Academy Award-winning performance." He straightened his costume and gave one final dramatic bow. "I call the movie The Dark-Haired Asshole." From downstairs, everyone heard the announcement and immediately started laughing again. Talia shook her head. "I don't even know how he survived the night." And Tate, despite himself, couldn't stop the small smile that appeared. He hated admitting it, but Noah had absolutely owned the Halloween party. For the rest of the Halloween party, whenever Tate finally started to relax, Noah would find a way to bring the nightmare back. Every so often, when Tate was talking with someone or enjoying his drink, Noah would quietly appear behind him, talking in Uncle Joey's voice. "Hello, nephew," Noah would say in the perfect Joey voice. "Would you get me a drink?" Tate would jump every single time. More than once, he nearly dropped his glass. "Stop doing that," Tate would snap, turning around in frustration. "I don't want to have a conversation with a fake version of Uncle Joey, it's creepy." Noah would simply smile, still completely committed to the character. "Where is Noah?" the fake Joey would ask. "I would like to spend some alone time with him. Would you help me with that, nephew?" That was always the moment Tate lost his patience. "No," he would shout. Then, in a complete dramatic fashion, Tate would throw his hands into the air. "Mommy, mommy, he's doing it again." The entire room would burst into laughter. Talia would shake her head, laughing as she watched her son get fooled over and over. "I can't believe you keep falling for it," she teased. Tate would glare at Noah. "It's not funny anymore." Noah would immediately switch back into the Joey voice. "That's exactly what someone who is afraid of Uncle Joey would say." And Tate would groan, knowing the joke was never truly going to end. Noah had made the rules himself. Tate was supposed to be out of his life. There would be boundaries now, no more sharing a bed, no more pretending everything between them was the same as it had always been. At least that had been the plan. After an evening of Halloween pranks, complete with Noah's over-the-top impression of a fictional, ghostly Uncle Joey, those rules suddenly didn't seem to matter anymore. Noah had left his bedroom door slightly open before turning out the light. A few minutes later, he heard hurried footsteps racing down the hallway. The door swung open. Tate practically dove into the room. Without saying a word, he bounded onto the bed, yanked the comforter over his head, and curled into the warmest corner of the mattress as though the blankets could shield him from every ghost in the world. His breathing was quick and uneven. "They're out there," Tate mumbled from beneath the covers. Noah raised an eyebrow. "Who's out there?" "The ghosts," Tate answered immediately, "especially Uncle Joey." Noah couldn't help smiling, though he also felt a pang of guilt. He had been the one pretending to be the spooky Halloween version of Uncle Joey all evening. He sighed. "I really did scare you." A muffled voice answered from beneath the blankets. "I hate ghosts." Noah leaned back against the headboard, shaking his head with an amused smile. "You know none of that was real." "I know," Tate admitted quietly, "but tonight, I just don't want to sleep alone." For a long moment, Noah said nothing. His own rules echoed in his mind, reminding him that Tate wasn't supposed to be here anymore. Yet there Tate was, hiding beneath the blankets, more frightened than embarrassed. Noah let out a quiet sigh. "Fine," he said softly, "just for tonight." From underneath the comforter came a tiny, relieved thanks. Despite everything that had changed between them, Noah couldn't bring himself to send Tate back into the dark hallway alone. Noah had fallen asleep in his rambler when Tate quietly slipped into bed beside him. In the dim light, Tate noticed that Noah still had the black hair he'd dyed for his costume. Reaching over, he lightly tugged on it. "I don't like your hair," Tate said. Noah slowly opened his eyes, still half asleep. "You don't have to, you're not my buddy." Tate smirked. "My friends think I'm great," Noah continued, pretending to be offended. Maybe I'll pull a single white female and take over your life. Tate couldn't help but smile. Trying to lighten the mood, Noah suddenly put on an exaggerated high-pitched falsetto, imitating the eerie, feminine, obsessive tone of Hedra Hetty Carlson from Single White Female. "You are my life," he declared dramatically, fluttering his hands for emphasis. For a heartbeat the room was silent. Then Tate burst into laughter. Tate blinked, still catching his breath from the fright. He looked from Noah to the front door, then back again as he realized the ghostly act was finally over. "You," Tate said, pointing a shaky finger at Noah, "you scared me half to death." Noah's grin faded into an apologetic smile. "I know," he admitted, rubbing the back of his neck. "I got a little carried away." Tate let out a long, unsteady breath before punching Noah lightly on the shoulder. "I hate ghosts," he muttered. "I noticed," Noah replied with a sheepish laugh. Tate laughed, shaking his head at the ridiculousness of it. Noah closed his eyes again, satisfied with his dramatic performance, while Tate stayed there beside him, amused by the strange comfort they found in teasing each other. Noah turned off the lamp and tried to fall back asleep, but Tate's hands were still running through his black hair. "Tate," Noah said sleepily, "you're sleeping with yourself." Tate laughed quietly. "I guess I'm full of myself." "Go to sleep," Tate said, settling back in beside him, "and you're changing your hair tomorrow. It disturbs me." Noah smiled in the darkness. "I think I'll keep it forever." "I love this impression," Noah continued, teasing him. "When you leave, I suspect I'll come out wearing your impression." Tate shook his head, amused. "Mimicry is the sincerest form of flattery," Noah said, sounding pleased with himself. Tate laughed again, letting the absurdity of the moment settle between them as they finally drifted back toward sleep. Tate was just beginning to drift to sleep when he felt the mattress shift beside him. Then from only inches away, came a low, theatrical whisper. "All bad little boys must close their eyes," Noah said in the sinister voice of the fictional Halloween version of Uncle Joey. "Sleep well, nephew." He ended the sentence with a playful hiss near Tate's ear, fully committed to the ghostly character. Tate's eyes flew open. "Noah," he gasped, clutching the blankets to his chest. The fake Joey only grinned. "It's Halloween," he crooned in his eerie voice. "Little ghouls come out after dark." Tate groaned, half startled and half exasperated. "I thought you said you were done." "I lied," the fake Joey whispered dramatically. Tate buried his face beneath the covers, shaking his head. "I can't believe you." Noah finally broke character, laughing. Okay, I'm really done this time." He reached over and gave Tate's shoulder a reassuring pat. "You know I'm only playing." Tate slowly lowered the blanket, still glaring at him. "I know." He sighed. "But don't do the Joey voice again." Noah's smile softened and he nodded. "I won't." The room fell quiet. For Halloween, Noah had invented a spooky, fictional version of Uncle Joey, a mischievous little ghoul meant only for the night's ghost stories. It was nothing like the real Joey, who had been gentle, kind-hearted, and deeply loved. Tate chose to remember the real man, not the playful Halloween character Noah had created. Noah was woken up around 4 in the morning when he noticed Tate shifting beside him. At first, he thought Tate was simply restless, but then he realized he was having a nightmare. It happened occasionally, but very rarely, not like when Tate was a teenager. Back then, the nightmares had been more frequent and harder to ignore. Now they came only once in a while, appearing without warning and leaving Tate caught somewhere between sleep and whatever memory or fear had found him. Tate slowly crawled off Noah's bed and lowered himself onto the floor before disappearing underneath it. Curled up in the darkness, he started sucking his thumb. Noah woke fully and turned on the lamp. Confused and concerned, he leaned over the edge of the bed and then lowered himself down, sticking his entire head underneath to look at him. "Tate." There was barely enough room beneath the twin-size bed for someone as big as Tate, a 27-year-old man built close to 200 pounds, but somehow he had managed to fold himself into that small space. "Tate, are you okay?" No answer. Noah stayed there for a while, watching him, unsure what to do. After what felt like an hour, maybe 2, Tate finally began to move. Slowly, he crawled out from underneath the bed. Noah sat up, expecting him to say something, but Tate didn't speak. He simply stood, turned, and walked out of the room. Tate. Again, no response. Tate moved quickly down the hallway, passing several doors before he finally stopped. A few moments later, he quietly entered another bedroom and went back to sleep. Noah remained sitting on the edge of the bed, staring toward the open doorway. Tate didn't come back that night, not to Noah's bedroom anyway. He was only a few doors away, but somehow it felt much farther. The next evening, Tate slept down the hall instead of in Noah's room. Noah didn't ask questions. After what had happened the night before, he understood that Tate needed whatever space he was trying to create, even if Noah didn't fully understand why. The house was completely quiet in the middle of the night when Noah was suddenly awakened by the sound of his bedroom door opening. The noise startled him. The blond man sat up quickly, his heart racing as he tried to figure out what was happening in the darkness. Then he saw Tate. Tate ran across the carpet and dove onto the bed. Noah barely had time to react before Tate landed beside him and wrapped himself around him. The way Tate moved was unlike the person Noah knew during the day. The confident, larger-than-life man who could face almost anything was gone. In that moment, Tate seemed like a frightened child looking for the only person who could make him feel safe. Tate, Noah whispered, confused and concerned. Tate didn't answer. His teeth were chattering and his entire body was shaking. Hide me, Tate kept saying. Noah held on to him. Tate, what are you talking about? Don't let me be found, Tate whispered desperately. Don't let me be found, please. His voice cracked with fear. He wasn't just scared, he was terrified. His whole body trembled against Noah as if he were trying to escape something only he could see. Tate, you're here, Noah said softly. You're safe. But Tate couldn't seem to hear him. Whatever nightmare or memory had followed him out of sleep still had a hold on him. Poor Tate was shaking so badly that Noah could feel the cold running through him. His skin was turning pale, almost blue from the fear and the chill. Noah pulled him closer, trying to warm him and remind him that he wasn't alone. Slowly, Tate pressed himself against Noah's body, curling into him like he had when he was much younger. He placed his head against Noah's chest, listening to his heartbeat. Noah didn't move. He just held him. Tate's breathing remained uneven at first. Tears slipped down his face as he lay there, still frightened and overwhelmed. I'm here, Noah whispered. Eventually, exhaustion won. Tate's grip loosened, his breathing slowed, and he finally fell asleep with his head resting on Noah's chest. Noah stayed awake, looking down at him. He had seen Tate angry. He had seen him stubborn, determined, and impossible to intimidate. He had seen the person Tate wanted the world to believe he was. But this was different. This was the part of Tate that he hid from everyone. Once Noah was certain Tate was asleep, he carefully reached for his phone. He didn't want to leave him, but he knew he needed to talk to someone who might understand. He called Andrew. When Andrew answered, Noah kept his voice low. Andrew, I need to talk to you. There was a pause. I don't know what's happening with him, Noah said, looking back at Tate, but something is really wrong. Noah stared at Tate sleeping beside him, still holding onto him even in his sleep. I've never seen him this scared before. What's going on? Andrew asked, his voice immediately filled with concern. Noah took a moment, trying to find the right words. He looked over at Tate, who was still asleep beside him, finally calm after the terror that had consumed him. I'm trying to explain it, Noah said quietly. Last night, Tate was sleeping in bed with me. He had some kind of nightmare, got scared, and ended up going down the hall to sleep in another bedroom. Andrew stayed silent, listening. And tonight, he was sleeping a few doors down, Noah continued. Then sometime in the middle of the night, he must have had another nightmare. He ran into my room, dove onto the bed, almost collided with me, and then just buried himself into my chest. Noah lowered his voice. He kept saying, hide me, don't let me be found. There was a pause on the phone. Andrew didn't interrupt. He listened carefully to every word, hearing the worry in Noah's voice more than the details themselves. He was shaking, Noah added, like he was terrified of something, not just scared of a bad dream. It was like he was trying to get away from something. Andrew remained quiet for a moment, absorbing what Noah had told him. Noah looked down at Tate, who was still holding on to him even in sleep. I've never seen him like this, Noah admitted. Andrew finally spoke, his voice thoughtful and concerned. "I've known Tate a long time," he said, "and if he's letting himself come to you like that, whatever is happening must be deeper than just a nightmare." The room was quiet, and for a moment he thought Tate was still asleep. Then he saw him. Tate was lying across the mattress, curled up and disoriented. His fingers slowly crawled along the sheets, moving across the bed as if he were searching for something. He wasn't awake yet, not completely. His hand kept patting the mattress, feeling around for Noah. When his fingers found nothing, Tate's eyes suddenly opened. For a second he looked confused, lost. Then he saw Noah standing there. Tate's face changed instantly. A scream escaped him, sharp and filled with fear. Before Noah could reach him, Tate scrambled backward and dove underneath the bed. "Tate!" But Tate was already hidden in the darkness beneath the mattress, breathing heavily and shaking. On the phone, Andrew heard everything. He heard Tate scream. He heard Noah calling his name. And he heard the panic in Noah's voice as he tried to reach him. "Noah," Andrew said urgently through the phone, "what happened?" Noah looked under the bed, his heart racing. "He's under the bed again," Noah said quietly. Andrew stayed silent for a moment, listening to the fear and confusion unfolding on the other end. "What do I do?" Noah whispered. But beneath the bed, Tate didn't answer. He only curled up tighter, still terrified, as if he was trying to disappear. The next night, Noah woke at exactly 4 o'clock in the morning, just as he usually did. The room was almost completely dark. At first he thought he was still dreaming. Then he saw Tate, standing about 4 feet from the bed. Perfectly still. His head was tilted ever so slightly and an odd smile rested on his face. In the dim light, it looked more unsettling than cheerful, as though he were caught in some private thought that Noah couldn't understand. Noah slowly pushed the blanket down just enough to see him clearly. "What are you doing?" he asked, his voice rough with sleep. Tate didn't answer. He simply continued staring. Noah frowned. "For a second," he muttered, trying to break the tension with humor, "you looked like you were about to kill Batman." The joke hung in the air. A moment later, Tate blinked. The strange smile disappeared, replaced by confusion. He looked around the room as if he'd only just realized where he was. "Noah," he asked quietly. "Yeah. How did I get here?" "You've been standing there for who knows how long." Tate looked down at his bare feet and rubbed his eyes. "I don't remember getting out of bed." Noah sat up, concern replacing his amusement. "You scared me." "I'm sorry," Tate whispered, "I didn't mean to." Noah nodded toward the bed. "Come on, sit down for a minute. Let's figure out what's going on before you wander into another room." Tate quietly sat on the edge of the mattress, still looking bewildered, while the silence of the early morning settled around them once again. Noah gently guided Tate into the living room, keeping a steady hand on his shoulder. As they passed the dining room, Noah stopped so abruptly that Tate nearly walked into him. The dining table was covered with empty shot glasses. Whiskey. Vodka. One after another. Noah counted silently. 18, 19, 20. His stomach dropped. "Oh no." He looked back at Tate, whose expression was distant and unfocused. "It looks like you drank while you weren't fully aware of what you were doing." Tate frowned. I don't remember." Noah felt a surge of alarm. If Tate had really consumed that much alcohol, this was far beyond something they could handle on their own. "We need Andrew," Noah said, already reaching for his phone. "And if you drank anywhere close to this amount, we may need emergency medical help too." He pointed toward the couch. "Tate, sit down, don't try to walk around." Tate nodded blankly and wandered over to the couch. But instead of sitting the way he normally did, he perched stiffly on the very edge of the cushion, his posture rigid and unnatural, staring silently at the floor. Noah watched him for a moment, uneasy. "I'll call Andrew right now," he said. Tate gave only the slightest nod. Keeping one eye on him, Noah stepped into the hallway and dialed Andrew's number, explaining what they had found and emphasizing how much alcohol appeared to be missing. The more he spoke, the more concerned he became. When he ended the call, he looked back toward the living room. Tate hadn't moved. He was still sitting exactly where Noah had left him, staring into space. Noah decided not to leave him alone any longer. Whatever had happened during the night, Tate needed to be monitored until Andrew or emergency medical personnel, if his condition worsened, arrived. Noah helped Tate lie down on the couch. "Just close your eyes and rest," he said. "Don't try to get up, I don't want you getting dizzy." Tate gave a faint nod. "I'll only be 5 minutes," Noah added. "I'm going upstairs to take a quick shower, stay here, okay?" There was no reply. Assuming Tate had heard him, Noah hurried upstairs to the second-floor bathroom. He stepped into the shower, letting the hot water wash away the tension of the night. A few minutes later, he was rinsing the shampoo from his hair when he heard the bathroom door creak open. He froze. The shower door slowly slid aside. Someone stepped inside. Noah startled so violently that he nearly slipped. He instinctively grabbed a towel and wrapped it around himself before looking up. "Tate." Tate stood there fully clothed, his clothes soaked almost instantly by the spray. His arms hung limply at his sides. "What are you doing in here?" Noah asked, his voice echoing off the tile. There was no answer. Tate simply stared at him. His expression was vacant, his eyes fixed on Noah without recognition, as though he were looking through him instead of at him. A chill ran through Noah that had nothing to do with the water. "Tate." Still nothing. Noah slowly stepped out of the shower, keeping the towel wrapped around himself. "Can you hear me?" After several long seconds, Tate blinked. His gaze wandered around the bathroom in confusion. "Noah." "Yeah," Noah replied gently, "it's me." Tate frowned. I don't know why I'm here." Noah studied him carefully. The unsettling, distant look was gone, replaced by bewilderment. "It's okay," Noah said quietly. "Let's get you downstairs." Noah gently guided Tate out of the shower and into the bathroom. For a brief moment, Tate looked around as though he had no idea where he was. His eyes landed on the running water and something in his expression changed. He turned abruptly. His knees buckled. "Tate." Noah lunged forward and caught him before he struck the tile floor. At first, Noah thought the alcohol had finally caught up with him, that Tate was simply dizzy and unsteady. "Easy," Noah said, lowering him carefully to the floor. "I've got you." But then he noticed the shaking. It wasn't ordinary trembling. Tate's arms and legs began jerking uncontrollably, his whole body stiffening as the movements rapidly intensified. "Oh no." Noah's heart lurched. This wasn't drunkenness. "Tate, can you hear me?" There was no response. The convulsions grew more violent. Just then, the sound of the front door echoed through the house. "Andrew," Noah shouted as loudly as he could, "we're upstairs." Heavy footsteps pounded up the staircase. Andrew rushed into the bathroom, took one look at Tate, and immediately recognized the seriousness of the situation. "He's having a seizure," Andrew said, dropping to his knees beside him. Noah's face drained of color. "What do I do?" "Move anything he could hit," Andrew instructed calmly. "Don't try to hold him down and don't put anything in his mouth." Noah quickly slid a bath mat and a folded towel beneath Tate's head to cushion it against the hard tile while Andrew checked his breathing and glanced at his watch. "We need an ambulance," Andrew said, his voice firm. "Call 911 now." With trembling hands, Noah grabbed his phone, his pulse racing as he dialed, unable to take his eyes off Tate while the operator answered. The convulsions finally subsided. For several long seconds, the bathroom was eerily quiet except for Tate's ragged breathing. Then his right eye slowly opened. The first thing he saw was Andrew leaning over him, checking to see if he was responsive. Tate's pupils widened. His expression shifted from confusion to raw panic. "No," he screamed. Before either Noah or Andrew could react, Tate lashed out instinctively. His foot struck Andrew hard in the groin. Andrew gasped in pain and doubled over, instinctively wrapping his arms around himself. "Ow," he groaned through clenched teeth. Using the brief opening, Tate scrambled to his feet. His movements were clumsy and unsteady after the seizure, but adrenaline drove him forward. "Tate, wait," Noah shouted. Tate didn't seem to hear him. Still frightened and disoriented, he bolted out of the bathroom and sprinted down the hallway, his bare feet pounding against the hardwood floor. "Noah," Andrew said through a pained breath, "go after him, he's confused." Noah took off immediately, racing after Tate. "Tate," he called, "it's me, you're safe." But Tate kept running, looking over his shoulder with wide, frightened eyes, as though he didn't recognize where he was or the people trying to help him. Nearly 10 minutes after Noah's frantic 911 call, the flashing red and blue lights illuminated the windows of the house. The front door burst open as two EMTs hurried inside, carrying a cardiac monitor, airway equipment, and a medical bag. "Second floor," Noah shouted from the top of the staircase. The EMTs climbed the stairs two at a time. Andrew met them in the hallway and quickly summarized everything that had happened. "He collapsed in the bathroom," Andrew explained. "His whole body stiffened, then he had rhythmic convulsions. The episode lasted several minutes. When he came out of it, he seemed completely disoriented." "And then?" one of the EMTs asked. Andrew exchanged a bewildered glance with Noah. "He suddenly became frightened, kicked me without seeming to know who I was, got to his feet and ran down the hallway." The EMTs nodded, taking in every detail. After a careful search of the house, they found Tate hiding beneath a bed, curled into a tight ball with his arms wrapped around his legs. "Tate," one of the EMTs said gently, "we're not here to hurt you." For several minutes, Tate refused to move. His breathing was uneven and he stared silently at the floor. Finally, after Noah knelt nearby and spoke softly to him, Tate slowly crawled out from underneath the bed. The EMTs immediately began their assessment. One checked his pulse and blood pressure while the other examined his pupils, asked him his name, where he was, and what he remembered. Tate answered hesitantly. His voice was tired and there were noticeable gaps in his memory. "I don't remember much," he admitted. "Do you remember falling?" Tate slowly shook his head. "No." The EMTs completed a thorough neurological examination and listened carefully as both Noah and Andrew described the shaking, the loss of awareness, and the confusion afterward. "From everything you've described," one of the EMTs said, "it does sound as though he experienced a seizure. The confusion afterward is consistent with a postictal state." Andrew folded his arms, still trying to make sense of what he had witnessed. "I've seen a lot of seizures," he said quietly. The EMT looked at him. "How many?" "More than 500 over the years, some brief, some prolonged. I've worked with people who had chronic seizure disorders." He glanced toward Tate. "And I've never seen someone recover quite like this." Andrew remembered what he had learned years earlier in school. After a generalized seizure, many people entered the postictal phase, a period that could last minutes or even hours. During that time, people were often exhausted, confused, slow to respond, or fell asleep. Some couldn't remember what had happened. Others struggled to speak or recognize the people around them. What he had just witnessed had been very different. Tate had opened one eye, reacted in obvious fear, instinctively lashed out, and then ran down the hallway before anyone could stop him. Andrew slowly shook his head. "I'm not saying it couldn't happen," he said thoughtfully. "I'm saying I've never personally seen someone become mobile that quickly after a seizure. It caught me completely off guard." One of the EMTs nodded. "Recovery after a seizure can vary quite a bit from person to person. Some people remain deeply drowsy for a long time while others become confused, frightened, or unexpectedly active before they're fully aware of their surroundings." Andrew looked back at Tate, who now looked utterly exhausted. The fear had drained from his face, replaced by overwhelming fatigue. When one of the EMTs asked if he wanted to go to the hospital for further evaluation, Tate barely managed to keep his eyes open. "I just want to sleep," he murmured. The room fell quiet as Noah and Andrew exchanged worried looks, both realizing that whatever had happened that morning, it had frightened all of them in ways they would not soon forget. A few hours later, around lunchtime, Chloe arrived to take Tate home to Beverly Hills. Before Tate left, Andrew checked him over one last time, making sure he was stable and encouraging Chloe to keep a close eye on him for the rest of the day. Satisfied that Tate was safe, Andrew said goodbye and returned to his clinic. The house suddenly felt quiet. Too quiet. The adrenaline that had carried Noah through the morning finally gave way to exhaustion. He stretched out on the living room couch, closed his eyes, and within minutes drifted into a deep sleep. Then the dream began. Noah was 15 years old again. He had just come home from school, dropping his backpack by the front door of the blue mansion before climbing the familiar staircase 2 steps at a time. "Tate," he called. No answer. He pushed open the bedroom door. There sat Tate. He was perched on the edge of his bed, staring silently at the wall opposite him. His eyes didn't blink, his face was expressionless. He didn't seem to notice Noah standing in the doorway. "Tate." "Nothing." Noah frowned. He walked across the room until he was standing directly in front of him. "Tate." Still no response. The silence felt wrong. Noah gently touched Tate's shoulder. No reaction. Concern growing, he gave him a careful shake. "Tate." The instant Noah let go, Tate's body tipped backward onto the mattress. He fell completely limp, landing flat on his back without trying to catch himself. "Tate." Noah's heart lurched into his throat. He scrambled onto the bed beside him, shaking him again, more urgently this time. "Tate, wake up, please." There was still no response. Tate's eyes remained open, fixed on the ceiling, utterly vacant. Panic surged through Noah as he stumbled backward off the bed, his voice echoing through the mansion. "Talia, Terrence, somebody help." The dream dissolved into darkness, leaving Noah with the same helpless fear he had felt all those years ago. Noah woke with a sharp gasp. For a few seconds, he didn't know where he was. The bedroom from the dream was gone. The blue mansion was gone. The terrified 15-year-old version of himself was gone. Instead, he was lying on the living room couch of his green Rambler, surrounded by the familiar quiet of his own home. Morning light filtered through the windows, casting pale shapes across the floor. The television was still off. The house was completely still. Too still. Noah sat up slowly, rubbing his face as the memory of the dream came rushing back. Tate is sitting on the bed. The blank stare. The way his body had gone limp. The helpless panic Noah had felt as a teenager. He swallowed hard. Even decades later, that moment still had the power to reach inside him and pull him back. He looked around the empty room. "Tate," he called softly before remembering. Tate wasn't there. The realization settled heavily. Noah leaned back against the couch, staring at the ceiling. The night before had brought everything back, the fear, the confusion, the feeling that something was wrong but not knowing how to fix it. He had spent years trying to understand Tate, trying to protect him, trying to figure out the moments when Tate seemed present and the moments when he disappeared somewhere Noah couldn't reach. The house was quiet, but Noah couldn't shake the feeling that his mind had brought him back to that memory for a reason. He stood slowly and walked toward the kitchen, making coffee with hands that still felt slightly unsteady. On the counter sat his phone. For a long moment he stared at it. Then he picked it up. His thumb hovered over Tate's name. Noah wasn't sure what he was going to say. He only knew that after everything that had happened, he needed to know Tate was okay. The phone clicked. Noah froze for a moment when the line connected. "Hello." Tate's voice came through the speaker, calm and familiar. "Noah." Noah let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. "Hey." There was a pause. "You sound strange," Tate said. "What's wrong?" Noah sat down at the kitchen table, staring at the empty chair across from him. "I had a dream last night." "A bad one." "Yeah." He hesitated, trying to find the right words. "I dreamed I was 15 again. I came home from school, found you sitting on your bed and you weren't responding. You were just staring at the wall. I shook you and when I let go you fell backward. You were completely limp." The other end of the phone went quiet. "Tate." After a moment Tate exhaled softly. "Noah, it was probably just your nerves. Everything that happened recently, the stress, the fear, seeing me collapse, your brain is trying to process it." "No," Noah said quietly. There was something in his voice that made Tate stop. "Noah, it wasn't just a dream." The silence stretched. "I remember it," Noah continued. "I remember being 15, I remember walking into that room, I remember being terrified." Tate sounded confused. "Noah, that never happened." Noah gripped the phone tighter. "Yes, it did." "No." "Tate." "Noah, I would remember something like that." The certainty in Tate's voice made Noah pause. Then Tate said quietly, "You know what I think. I think you're remembering the feeling, not the event." Noah closed his eyes. But he couldn't shake the memory. Because it didn't feel like a dream. It felt like something he had buried. Something everyone had buried. "After it happened," Noah whispered, "I remember you being taken to the hospital." Tate went silent again. "What?" "You were in shock," Noah said. "That's what they told us. You were overwhelmed, you couldn't explain what happened." Tate's voice lowered. "Noah, that isn't real." "No one remembers," Noah said. The words hung between them. Not just Tate. No one. No family member. No doctor. No record. No explanation. It was as if the entire moment had disappeared from everyone's memory except Noah's. Tate swallowed. "Are you saying something happened to me that everyone forgot?" Noah looked around his quiet green rambler. "I don't know." For the first time, Tate didn't immediately argue. The silence between them felt heavier than before. Because somewhere deep inside, both of them wondered the same thing. What if Noah wasn't remembering a dream? What if he was remembering something that had been erased? "Go back to sleep," Tate said softly. "It's 6 in the morning." Noah looked toward the clock on the kitchen wall, then back down at the phone in his hand. He knew Tate was probably right. The exhaustion, the stress, everything that had happened the night before, it had all piled up until his mind had dragged him somewhere he hadn't visited in years. Still, the memory felt too real. "Do you ever have dreams like that?" Noah asked. There was a pause on the other end of the line. Tate didn't answer immediately. Finally he said, "Only when I'm stressed." Noah stayed quiet. "Your mind does weird things when it gets overloaded," Tate continued. "It takes pieces of memories, fears, things you've been thinking about and mixes them together." Noah looked down at the floor. "It's not real," Tate said gently. "It was just a dream." The certainty in Tate's voice was comforting, even if Noah wasn't completely convinced. "Okay," Noah whispered. "Go back to bed, Noah." A small smile tugged at Noah's face. "You too." "I will." The call ended. For a moment Noah sat there holding the phone, staring at the blank screen. Eventually he placed it on the table and lay back down on the couch. The green rambler was silent again. He pulled the blanket over himself and closed his eyes, trying to let the dream fade away. But even as sleep began to return, one thought stayed with him. The strangest part wasn't that he had dreamed about Tate. It was how certain he had been that he remembered something everyone else had forgotten. Noah drifted deeper into sleep. The sounds of the green rambler disappeared, replaced by something quieter, something older. He felt as though he were floating, not falling, not waking, just moving somewhere between memory and dreams. Then he opened his eyes. He was no longer in his living room. He was standing in a bedroom he hadn't seen in years. The room looked exactly as it had in the past. On the floor sat a young Tate. 14 years old. He was completely focused on a toy train set spread across the carpet. His small hands pushed one train forward as he made the sound himself. "Choo-choo," Tate said happily. The little train rolled across the floor and bumped into another train sitting nearby. "Crash." Noah stared. The strangest part was that Tate wasn't playing with him. He was playing alone. Noah slowly looked around, realizing he was somehow inside this memory but not a part of it. He stepped away from the bed. The floor didn't creak. The room didn't react to him. It was like he was a ghost watching a moment that had already happened. Tate pushed the trains together again, making them collide. "Choo-choo." Noah swallowed. "Tate." The young boy stopped. Slowly he looked up. And smiled. "You've been asleep for a long time now." Noah froze. Unlike before, Tate could see him. Noah forced a small smile. "I was tired." Young Tate tilted his head. "What time is it?" Noah looked around confused. "I don't know." Tate smiled wider. "It's 1983. The word sent a chill through Noah. A year from his memories. A year that felt impossible to return to. Tate picked up one of the trains and rolled it along the carpet. "Tomorrow's my 15th birthday." He looked up at Noah with the hopeful expression of a child waiting for something important. "Did you get me a gift?" Noah stared at him. The question felt simple. Normal. But somehow, standing there in a memory that shouldn't exist, it felt like the most important question Tate had ever asked him. Noah stopped. Because he suddenly realized something. This wasn't just a dream about the past. Tate was waiting for an answer. Noah slowly lowered himself onto the floor beside teenage Tate, still trying to understand what he was seeing. The bedroom felt real. Too real. The faded posters on the walls, the toy trains were scattered across the carpet, the sound of Tate's voice from a time that Noah knew had already passed. Noah looked at the boy beside him. How many hours was I asleep? Tate stopped moving the train. He looked up at Noah with a calm expression that somehow made the answer even more unsettling. A long time. Noah gave a small, confused laugh. How long is a long time? Tate rolled the train back and forth between his fingers. 10 years. Noah stared at him. 10 years. Tate nodded. Give or take a few months. The room seemed to grow colder. Noah looked around, then back at the teenage version of Tate sitting beside him. Why have I been asleep for 10 years? His voice came out quieter than he expected. The question seemed to hang in the room. Tate didn't answer right away. Instead, he slowly raised one finger and placed it against his lips. SHH. Noah frowned. What? Tate looked toward the bedroom door. Not frightened. Not surprised. Just careful. Don't wake them. Noah followed his gaze. Wake who? Tate didn't respond. He simply picked up the toy train again and pushed it along the track. Choo-choo. Noah watched him unsettled. You know this isn't normal, right? Tate smiled faintly. Normal depends on when you wake up. Noah's heart tightened. Because the boy sitting beside him wasn't acting like a child pretending. He was acting like someone who had been waiting. Waiting for Noah to finally open his eyes. Noah noticed the wallpaper first. At first he thought the room was simply becoming darker. But then he realized something was wrong. The walls weren't aging. Time hadn't passed. The bedroom wasn't becoming an old, abandoned room because years had gone by. It was something else entirely. The wallpaper was turning black from the outside inward. Like something was spreading. Like a sickness. The darkness crawled across the walls and spilled onto the floor in twisting patterns. It reminded Noah of a disease consuming healthy tissue, a slow-moving corruption spreading through everything it touched. The floor beneath the toy trains began to darken. The walls cracked. Vines pushed through the surface, curling along the room as if the house itself were being taken over. But then Noah noticed something that made his stomach drop. The only place untouched was the small area where he was sitting. The floor beneath him was still clean. The air around him was still clear. Everything else was rotting. Noah slowly looked around, trying to understand what he was seeing. The smell hit him next. It was unbearable. A heavy, sickening scent filled the room. The smell of decay. The smell of death. Noah immediately covered his mouth with his hand as his stomach turned. He gagged, fighting against the urge to vomit. What is this? He whispered. Young Tate sat quietly beside him, still holding the toy train. He didn't look afraid. He didn't look surprised. He only watched the darkness spreading across the room. Noah looked back at him. Tate, why isn't it touching me? The boy slowly lifted his eyes. For a moment he looked much older than 14. Because you're asleep and don't know it, Noe. Noah stared at him. What does that mean? Tate looked down at the train in his hands. The things people forget don't disappear. The vines continued to grow. The blackness continued to spread. And Noah realized the room wasn't showing him the passage of time. It was showing him what had been left behind. The 14-year-old Tate smiled at Noah. It was the same gentle smile Noah remembered from years ago, the smile of a boy who trusted him completely. For a moment the room became quiet. Then something changed. Noah noticed it first in Tate's hand. The skin looked different. Not older. Not aged. Wrong. A wave of horror moved through Noah as the image of Tate, the boy in front of him, began to decompose. The same darkness that had spread across the walls seemed to reach toward Tate, slowly consuming, corrupting him. It was as if the room itself was forgetting him piece by piece. No. Noah's voice caught. The boy's outline flickered between the Tate he remembered and something much more frightening. The room seemed to be erasing him, the decomposition spreading slowly as though he were being pulled apart by the decay surrounding them. Noah crawled closer. Noah stood frozen in the darkness of the dream. There was no film. No projector. No recording is playing in the background. This was not a memory captured by a camera. This was something else. He was there, standing in front of 14-year-old Tate. For a moment, Noah saw the boy he remembered. The familiar face. The familiar smile. The same Tate who had laughed with him, who had sat beside him, who had trusted him. Then something began to change. Tate's face slowly started to transform. The softness of his young features began to disappear. His small jaw and cheeks began to thin until the structure beneath became visible, as though the beauty and innocence Noah associated with him were being stripped away. Noah couldn't move. Tate. The boy's appearance began to decompose. Not like time had passed. Like something hidden underneath was finally being revealed. The beautiful face Noah knew began to break apart, as if it had never truly existed. As if it had only been a facade. A carefully painted surface covering something much darker. Something buried. Something Noah was never supposed to see. The dream seemed to peel away the image of the happy, carefree child and expose a secret beneath it, a secret that felt more disturbing than the nightmare itself. But Tate was still smiling. That was what terrified Noah the most. A large smile remained on his face as everything around him seemed to fall apart. Tate, why are you smiling? The boy didn't answer. The room stayed silent. The darkness grew heavier. Noah looked at the child in front of him and realized the dream wasn't showing him a monster. It was showing him the difference between what everyone saw and what Tate had been hiding. The beautiful parts. The painful parts. The parts that had been covered for years. 14-year-old Tate was still standing in front of him. Or at least something that had once looked like Tate. At first Noah noticed small changes. Things he almost convinced himself he was imagining. The way Tate's posture shifted. The way his silhouette looked slightly wrong against the darkness around them. Then the changes became impossible to ignore. Tate's body began to deform. Noah felt his stomach tighten as the familiar shape of the boy he knew slowly became distorted into something unnatural. His limbs began to grow longer, stretching beyond normal proportions until they looked almost impossible. His arms and legs no longer matched the teenager Noah remembered. They seemed too long, too thin, and completely out of place. No. Noah whispered the word without realizing it. He took a small step backward. Tate's face changed next. His eyes appeared too far apart, spread unnaturally across his head, creating a version of Tate that looked like a frightening imitation of the person Noah knew. His hands changed as well. They looked strange and unfamiliar, almost like the hands of a creature Noah had only seen in nightmares. Noah stared, unable to process what he was seeing. The boy who had once held toy trains. The boy who had grabbed Noah's hand as a child. The boy who had laughed with him in the hallways. The boy who had sat beside him during some of the hardest moments of their lives. That boy was still there. But the dream had twisted everything about him. Tate's spine began to bend unnaturally, changing his posture until he looked like he was carrying a weight Noah couldn't see. Then Noah noticed his mouth. A horrible overbite appeared, something Tate had never had before. It wasn't a flaw Noah recognized. It wasn't something from reality. It was something created by the nightmare. Noah's heart pounded. Tate, what is happening to you? The distorted figure looked back at him. And that was the worst part. The eyes were different. The body was different. Everything about him was wrong. But the expression was still Tate. The same sadness. The same loneliness. The same look Noah had seen countless times when Tate was trying to hide something. Noah realized the dream wasn't changing Tate because it hated him. It was showing him a version of Tate that represented everything hidden beneath the surface. The parts no one saw. The pain no one noticed. The secrets that had been buried for years. And Noah couldn't escape the feeling that this nightmare was asking him one question. How well did he really know Tate? Tate no stop what's happening. But young Tate only continued to smile. Not because he wasn't afraid. Because he seemed to already understand. The vines curled higher along the walls. The smell of death grew stronger and Noah covered his mouth again, fighting back nausea as panic rose in his chest. Tate. He reached out but his hand hesitated. He was terrified that if he touched him, there would be nothing left. The boy looked at Noah one last time. If you wake up, Noah, you'll look like me. Noah's eyes filled with fear and confusion. What do you mean? Tate's smile faded into something sad. This is real, you've just never been able to see it. The room trembled. Noah blinked. For a moment he thought his eyes were playing tricks on him. Then he saw it. Standing beside Tate was something else. Something that had been there all along. A figure hidden in the darkness of the dream. Noah's breath caught. It was a monster. A nightmare made real. A Wendigo. A twisted, unnatural presence that seemed to belong to the darkest parts of folklore and fear. It stood beside Tate like a shadow that had followed him for years. Noah looked back at Tate. The boy was still changing. Still decomposing. Still trapped between the person Noah remembered and something the dream was forcing him to see. But the most terrifying part wasn't what Tate looked like. It was the expression on what remained of his face. Fear. Pure unmistakable fear. Noah stared. Tate wasn't afraid of himself. He wasn't afraid of the changes. He was afraid of the creature standing beside him. The Wendigo watched silently, towering over them, its presence filling the dream with a sense of dread. Noah's heart pounded. Because suddenly he understood. The monster wasn't replacing Tate. It was standing next to him. Separate from him. Whatever this thing was, whatever nightmare it represented, Tate looked like he had been forced to stand beside it for a very long time. Tate. Noah stepped forward. For the first time since the dream began, he wasn't looking at the horror. He was looking at the scared child underneath it. The 14-year-old boy looked terrified of something only he could see. And Noah realized the dream wasn't showing him what Tate had become. It was showing him what Tate had been afraid of. The Wendigo moved. Noah froze as the creature slowly reached out with its long, unnatural hand. For a moment he expected it to attack. Instead, it reached inside the darkness surrounding it and pulled something out. An old photograph. A Polaroid. Noah stared. The creature held the picture carefully between its fingers before extending it toward him. It was larger than a normal instant photo, about 6 by 8 inches. The edges looked worn, as if they had been carried around for years. Noah looked at the front of the photograph. But he couldn't see the image. The dream refused to reveal it. The picture remained just out of his understanding, hidden from his eyes. But he didn't need to see it. Not with Tate standing there. Noah looked at the 14-year-old boy beside the creature. The expression on Tate's face made his stomach drop. This wasn't a picture of a happy memory. It wasn't a birthday. It wasn't a family gathering. It wasn't Tate laughing with friends. Whatever was captured in that photograph was something Tate had never wanted to remember. Something that had followed him. Something that even the nightmare beside him was willing to reveal. Tate stared at the Polaroid with fear in his eyes. Not curiosity. Not anger. Fear. Noah slowly reached toward the photograph. Tate, what is this? Tate didn't answer. The Wendigo continued holding the picture out, almost like it was forcing Noah to look. And Noah realized the creature wasn't trying to scare him. It was showing him something. Something hidden. Something Tate had spent years keeping buried. For a moment, Tate only stared at the front of it. Then, almost reluctantly, he turned the photograph over. Noah leaned closer. That was when he noticed something wrong. The Wendigo had moved away, but something followed behind it. A trail. A thick, black, icky substance that clung to the ground wherever it stepped. It wasn't blood. It wasn't water. It looked like a dark, sticky liquid, almost like some kind of unnatural slime. Noah felt his stomach turn. The substance stretched and pulled as the creature moved, leaving behind a trail that looked almost alive. It reminded Noah of something like an egg sac or a strange organic residue from a nightmare. Something that shouldn't exist. Something that belonged somewhere hidden. The Wendigo didn't seem bothered by it. It moved silently through the darkness, leaving the black substance behind like a mark of where it had been. Noah looked back at Tate. The teenager wasn't watching the creature anymore. He was staring at the photograph in his hands. His face had gone pale. Whatever was on that Polaroid mattered. Whatever memory it held was something Tate had been afraid of for a long time. Noah looked again at the black trail left behind by the Wendigo and then at the fear in Tate's eyes. The creature was terrifying. But the expression on an older, 15-year-old Tate's face told Noah something even more frightening. Tate had known this thing existed long before Noah ever saw it. Noah watched in complete silence. He expected Tate to run, to hide, to move away from the creature that had terrified him. But Tate did something Noah could never have imagined seeing while awake. The 14-year-old boy slowly lowered himself to the ground. Then he crawled toward the monster. Noah's breath caught. "Tate, stop." His voice came out barely above a whisper. The Wendigo stood motionless, watching as Tate moved closer. The black substance left behind by the creature spread across the ground like a dark stain, but Tate didn't hesitate. He wasn't approaching it like someone walking toward an enemy. He was approaching it like someone who had known it for a very long time. Someone who was tired of running. Noah felt a chill. Every part of him wanted to pull Tate away. To grab him. To protect him. But he couldn't move. He was only a witness to whatever this dream was showing him. Tate reached the creature and stopped. The monster looked down at him. The terrifying figure that had made Tate afraid moments earlier now seemed strangely still. Almost waiting. Noah stared, trying to understand. Why would Tate crawl towards something that frightened him? Why would he move closer instead of away? Then Noah saw it. The expression on Tate's face wasn't one of surrender. It wasn't acceptance. It was exhaustion. Like a person who had been carrying a secret for so long that even fear had become familiar. Tate reached out. He opened his mouth wide, wrapping his lips around the Wendigo's cock and sliding down its length with practiced ease. The creature's claws dug into Tate's hair, guiding him deeper until Tate's throat bulged visibly around the intrusion. Wet, obscene sounds filled the air, slurping, gagging, the slick slide of saliva coating the beast's shaft as Tate bobbed his head. Tate gives the monster oral sex. Scene retracted, read extended scene on Wattpad. Noah's stomach lurched. He tried to look away, but his dream body refused to move. He watched in frozen horror as Tate's cheeks hollowed, his tongue dripping onto the monster next to him. The Wendigo growled as Tate let the creature do as he pleased with his face. The Wendigo's claws tightened, holding Tate in place while it used Tate. Noah's mind screamed, "This isn't real, this can't be happening," but the sounds were too vivid. Tate swallowed what he could, but the overflow ran in yellow, lemon-colored streams down his neck and chest. Noah's horror peaked as Tate pulled back. Noah choked with a gasp, his face soaked with sweat. The image of Tate's covered face burned behind his eyelids. Noah watched as Tate suddenly jerked to the side. The movement was so sudden that Noah almost missed it. One moment, Tate was reaching toward the creature. Next, his body reacted violently. Tate turned away and began vomiting. Noah froze. The sound echoed through the nightmare. Whatever Tate had not swallowed came back up onto the rotting floor beneath him. Noah expected to see something impossible. Something terrifying. Something that belonged in the nightmare surrounding them. But what appeared on the ground was the last thing he expected. It was ordinary. Lemon juice. Water. Nothing else. Noah stared. His mind struggled to make sense of it. The floor around Tate was decaying. The Wendigo stood nearby. Everything about the dream felt unnatural. But what came from Tate was not some dark substance or something monstrous. It was just a mixture of something familiar. Something human. Noah looked at Tate. The fear on his face was still there. The exhaustion. The pain. But underneath all of it, Noah saw something else. A person. Not a monster. Not the nightmare. Just Tate. And somehow that was what unsettled Noah the most. Because the dream wasn't showing him a creature. It was showing him a terrified boy surrounded by things he couldn't understand. The toy train Tate had played with rolled slowly across the floor by itself, the tiny wheels making a faint clicking sound. Noah stared at the boy in front of him, horrified, because this wasn't just a nightmare. It felt like he was watching a memory that had been buried alive. And somehow, Tate had been waiting for him to find it. Noah opened his eyes. For a few seconds he didn't move. Everything was dark. The surface beneath him felt strange, not like a bed, not like a couch. Like sand. He pushed himself upright slowly, brushing the grains away from his hands. The first thing he noticed was the dark night sky. The moon hung directly above him. A full moon. It was breathtakingly beautiful, glowing against the darkness. But something about it felt wrong. It looked impossibly far away. Noah stared upward, trying to understand where he was. Then he looked around. His breath caught. He wasn't in a room. He was standing inside a giant rectangular dirt hole. The walls around him were made of packed earth stretching high above his head. The ground beneath his feet was uneven, covered in loose dirt and sand. Noah turned in a slow circle. Where am I? His voice sounded small in the open space. He reached into his pocket and found his flashlight. His hand shook slightly as he turned it on. The beam cut through the darkness, moving across the dirt walls. Then he saw something. A rope. It was attached to the side of the hole, hanging down within reach. A way out. Noah stepped toward it carefully. The loose dirt shifted beneath his feet as he approached the rope. He reached out, trying to decide whether it was sturdy enough to hold his weight. Then his foot touched something hidden beneath the sand. The object shifted slightly. Noah stumbled. His arms flew out as he caught himself, nearly falling onto the ground. His heart pounded. He froze. The flashlight beam shook in his hand. Slowly, Noah looked down toward where his foot had landed. But he didn't move closer. Something about the darkness around him made him hesitate. The silence of the hole suddenly felt heavier. As if he wasn't alone. Noah slowly looked down. The flashlight beam trembled in his hand as it moved across the dirt. Then he saw what he had stepped on. A child. A small child is lying motionless at the bottom of the hole. Noah's breath caught. The child was wearing yellow pajamas covered in crescent moons. The matching top and pants were faded, but the pattern was unmistakable. Noah knew those pajamas. He remembered them. They weren't just any pajamas. They were his. A memory came rushing back. The early to mid-1970s. A much younger Noah wearing those exact pajamas while running through the house as a little boy. He remembered Tate insisting that his mother, Talia, buy them from the downtown Macy's because they reminded him of the moon. Little Noah had only worn them on nights when there was a full moon. A strange little tradition that somehow had stayed with him. Noah stared down in disbelief. No. His voice shook. The child lying there wasn't a stranger. It was him. Little Noah. 4 years old. Unconscious, drugged, and motionless in the dirt. The realization hit him so hard that he stumbled backward. The flashlight slipped from his hand. It struck the ground with a dull thud, the beam spinning wildly across the walls of the hole. No, no, no. Noah stood frozen, staring down at his younger self. The full moon above them seemed impossibly bright. The rope hung silently beside the wall. And at the bottom of the hole was a version of Noah that should have only existed in memories. A child who had no way of knowing he was being watched. A child who looked like he had been waiting there all along to be seen and heard. Then Noah heard something above him in the hole. A sound from above. A scuffling noise. Noah slowly looked up. The beam of the fallen flashlight barely reached the edge of the hole, but he could see movement. A small figure appeared at the top. Then a little boy jumped down into the hole. Noah froze. It was Tate. 4 years old. The child was wearing green Scooby-Doo pajamas, his hair messy from sleep, his face filled with fear and determination. Tate, Noah whispered. The little boy didn't seem to hear him. He ran straight toward the unconscious child in the yellow crescent moon pajamas. The moment Tate saw Noah lying there, his face crumpled. He started crying. Not quiet tears. Terrified, desperate sobs from a little boy who didn't understand why his friend wouldn't wake up. Noah, young Tate whispered shakily. His small hands grabbed Noah's arm gently.